the Biz Communication Show. I'm your host, Bill Lampton, the Biz Communication Guy. Every week, I hold a conversation with a recognized business communication expert. And that way, you and I can learn tips and strategies that will be beneficial for our business. This week, I'm happy to host Ken Fehner. Ken is based in the greater Atlanta, Georgia area. He has more than 30 years of experience with traditional marketing channels. His company, The Social Glue, and by the way, that's spelled Gloo. His company is an email marketing, social media marketing company. Ken works with local businesses, startups, national and international companies, supporting their email and social media needs. The scope of work includes email marketing and social media sites, including Facebook management and design, Twitter management and design, LinkedIn management, YouTube video creation, and more. Ken uses best practices to get results for his clients. No cookie cutter approach for him. Now, join me in welcoming Ken Fehner to the Biz Communication Show. Good morning, Ken.
Good morning, Bill. Thank you for having me.
Oh, delighted to, because there's so much that we need to learn about social media and email marketing. I was thinking a few minutes ago, 50 years ago, everybody had to learn typing.
Right. I
We,
remember those days.
yes, we've come a long way from that. We've gotten much more complex, much more sophisticated, much more technological, and that's to our advantage if we use it well. I'm going to start off with a very timely question.
Okay.
You and I have both noticed over the past year and a half that there are many people who use their social media contacts to express, sometimes quite vigorously, their political opinions and also criticize and even knock those whose opinions differ from theirs. What's your response to that?
I usually proceed with caution. Um, I'm very, when it comes to business, I'm very cautious. My job, a lot of times, 99% of the time, is to be my client online for them. So that feeds over into my personal life too. I try to keep my personal separate from my business, although because I've been doing this for so long, I have allowed people that I know, usually because we have very similar, we're friends because we have very similar opinions. They may be on my personal social media also. But when it comes to business, I post business stuff on business channels. When it comes to personal, I post personal stuff, but I still, even though it's personal, I try to take that step back and think about, how is this going to affect people? If, sometimes you read something and you go, I got to put this out there. And I take a step back and think for just a minute, this could offend some people. People have gotten to be very thin-skinned nowadays, and
I've noticed. We all have
yeah,
noticed.
and I don't want to offend people. I have a lot of good friends. I'm fairly conservative. I have a lot of friends who are very non-conservative, and I enjoy their company just as much I enjoy anybody else's company. And we have sometimes in person have very vigorous debates. But when you post something on social media, it often comes off almost as dropping the hammer. And when you're having a conversation, people know your tone of voice, people know your compassion for certain things or your passion for certain things, and it comes off differently. But when you make posts, it can come off totally different than maybe even you intended. So I always try to take a step back and be very careful with what I post if I'm posting it on a personal page.
I think what you're saying about the difference between the impact of the written word and the spoken word when you're there in person speaking to somebody is extremely important. In the communication training that I've done over an almost 25-year period, I've pointed out to people that if you say something to somebody in cold print, we might say, it can come
Right.
across without any interpretation. But Ken, if I'm with you and I call you sort of a nickname or something, and I slap you on the back and I smile and we both chuckle,
Right.
that's far different from the impression that you would have if I had sent you that nickname I just made up for you.
Right. Exactly. It's comes across very cold, very, you know,
Harsh.
harsh. Yes. And I think people sometimes and you can't blame them. I've read things before, and then later on when I talk to the person, like, oh, I didn't mean it that way. Um, and that's because I didn't unfriend them and we still talk. But there's a lot of people that just get offended and they unfriend you, and you're in another part of the country and you've lost touch with them now. So that's very unfortunate.
I'll give you an example that happened to me even before technology came in. After I finished my graduate degrees, I learned through my graduate school professor at Ohio University that, unknown to both of us, the federal grant that I was working under would pay for my dissertation typing. And gosh, I think that was $700, was a huge sum of money to be then, still a pretty large sum. So I kept sending letters to him. When am I going to get this? When am I going to get it? So finally, one day I went to my post office box at University of Georgia, where I was teaching, reached in the mailbox, and there was a letter there there was a note there, and it was a message from the professor's secretary.
Right.
And it said, Dr. Bose said he didn't know you were so greedy. Well, I went back to my office horrified. Here was my major professor, and I had insulted. And I called him very apologetically, and he laughed like crazy. He knew he had meant that just as
Joke.
a joke, a
Right.
lighthearted remark. And had he been there with me, okay, I could have gotten that.
Right.
But also, getting back to political opinions, my point is that you're probably not going to change anybody's mind anyway. That's a topic is people are fairly entrenched on. All you're going to do is anger some people, maybe lose some followers, when you
Right.
just don't have to do that. So I like your suggestion, recommendation, and that is think before you type.
Exactly. There's plenty of times, sometimes just typing it out is enough therapy to then delete it. By the time you get to the end of it and you read it back, you go, I probably shouldn't post this. And you don't know how many times I actually take that advice. I'll type it. And sometimes when I realize I've been typing for quite a while, I realize, okay, I'm getting a little bit too carried away here. What purpose is this going to serve?
You
And
haven't been typing, you've been venting.
I've been venting, exactly. I'm just pounding away on the keyboard, and then I realize, okay, that's their opinion. It doesn't agree with mine. I'm fine with that, so I don't have to post that.
I'm trying to remember if it was Abraham Lincoln or it was some famous person who said, or maybe it was Mark Twain. One of them said, it's fine for you to write a letter to an enemy as long as you don't mail
It's good advice.
it. Yeah. And speaking of mailing, you deal with email marketing.
Right,
One of the things, Ken, that I've heard people say, and I'm talking about people who are near the top of the consulting, speaking, coaching, teaching profession. I've heard some of them say, well, we don't do email marketing anymore. Nobody reads email newsletters. But
right.
apparently you think they do. Comment on that, please.
I do. And the first thing I would ask is, I can agree with them that probably their emails aren't getting read anymore, especially if they were using a really good marketing email service like a Constant Contact or a MailChimp, because they're going to tell you who's opening the emails. So if they're being opened or not. The other thing, just that I always warn people about, is that there is quite a few people who preview emails. And so if they don't actually open them, but they've read some of the content, that won't count as an open. So maybe your content isn't what they're looking for. There's a couple of reasons why, and that's what I would say is, why aren't your emails being opened? That's the issue. You, People work really hard on building their email lists, and then they do so many things wrong that cause their emails not to get opened.
What would be some of those things you're doing wrong?
One of the things, and it's so common sense, but so many people, the number two reason why an email gets open, well, the number one reason is the fact they know who it's coming from. The number two reason they open an email is what is in the subject line. If what is in the subject line relates to them, they are going to open the email.
You've got to
Uh,
have a relevant, catchy title.
right. And a lot of these consultants, there's a good chance, and I don't know them personally, but you don't know how many times when someone says, no one's opening my emails, and I go and I look at their account and I review their account, it will, their subject line will literally say February newsletter, March newsletter. It doesn't give
Yawn,
you,
yawn, yawn. Ho
it
hum.
doesn't, yeah, it doesn't give you a reason to open it. And then the second reason would be the content in there. How is the content? What is the content? How is it displayed? If you read one of my newsletters, you can literally read my newsletter in probably 30 seconds to 45 seconds. I'm a big believer keeping it short and sweet, and maybe spend 15 minutes reading the information I've shared with them. So there's a lot of content there. But the main thing is, when they click that button, I know they're interested in that topic. So I can create more topics like that. Most of my newsletters have 3 topics in them. And so if 2 of the topics get clicked on and one of them, everybody I send it to ignore, then I don't send out any more topics like the one that got ignored. The other thing is, who are they sending it to? A lot of people have their clients maybe divided up into several different buckets. And I'll give you an example. A lawyer, for example, that practices maybe family law, but also he helps businesses get established with, either becoming LLCs or becoming a corporation. He does that type of work also. Well, if he sends an email out talking about forming an LLC, and it goes to all the people on his list, the half that are maybe part of his um, you know business or personal law practice, they'll ignore that.
Wrong
That's
target audience.
exactly, they're going to ignore that totally. So segmenting your audience and sending it to the right people is so important. Even if that means that they don't get an email from you every single month, it's better to send them an email that is more crucial. And I have some clients who love to write, and they will write their emails, um, out, and they'll be very, very long. And if you get a very, very, well, I'll give you a great example. Chamber newsletters. We all know what a chamber newsletter looks like. It's probably a whole quarter's worth of information, all the dates, everything that's important. We read the maybe first scroll or two just to see if there's anything coming up we don't want to miss. The other stuff we don't look at. Um, if someone is used to getting a very long email that maybe takes them 4 or 5 minutes to read through, the next time that lands in their inbox, they're going to say, I'm going to read that later because I don't have 4 or 5 minutes to read it right now. And
But will they get back to it? Yeah.
that later usually becomes a never. So it's better to keep things short. Write your article, put it on your website as a blog, and then write a very short synopsis of it and click here to read more. Now you've accomplished 2 things. You've learned when they click on it that they enjoy that type of information. Secondly, you've now sent them to your website where they can actually roam around once they read the article and learn more about your business. So you accomplish a couple of different things.
One thing I noticed in your email newsletter, I saw your newsletter where you announced that you would be on the Biz Communication Show, which I appreciated.
Sure.
One thing I noticed is that your newsletter had photos. In fact, there was my photo and photo of 2 other people.
Right.
So just print alone is not going to keep an audience these days, right?
Right. You can actually embed videos in there. It's the video is a link, and then we'll take them to YouTube or wherever the video is stored. It can be on your website, which once again is a great tool to driving people to your website where they can learn more. But yes, it's the newsletter should be your brand. And so it should have your colors that match. Usually the headlines, when I'm creating a newsletter, the headlines will be of a color that is from the logo, something along those lines. So it should really focus on your brand. Constant Contact has a very neat tool now. When you start to build a newsletter for the first time, it actually asks you for your website. And so it will create 3 templates from you. It goes to your website. It actually pulls in your logo and then pulls in all your social media information and puts them as buttons at the bottom, and will give you a template with colors already designed based upon what's on your website. So
That's a, yeah,
it saves a lot of time for somebody getting started building a newsletter.
that's quite a head start for you right
Yes.
there.
Yes.
Ken, we have time for one more question. We can't leave out talking about LinkedIn.
Right.
And one of the things I've noticed, as you have and others have, is that LinkedIn in the last couple of years has gotten just a little less formal. For example, I remember a time, I know most of us do, when mentioning somebody's birthday and saying help them celebrate today, that was strictly Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. But now we see that on LinkedIn. Do you see that this is a trend with LinkedIn, that it's going to be maybe a little bit less stilted?
Yes, I definitely. I used to, I hate to say this, but about 2 years ago, I mean, I've been doing this for 9 years now, and for 7 of those years, I really haven't been a component of LinkedIn. And the reason why is everything that I liked about LinkedIn, they seem to have gotten rid of. And one of
And
those
just
things,
when you learn it, they would change something.
exactly, and you go like, this is great. Years ago, you used to be able to post events on LinkedIn, and it used to amaze me when I would click and say, oh, I'm going to this event. And I would show up at the event, and there would be people that I knew there. There would literally be people that said, I saw your post that you were coming to this event, and so I came too. And I thought that was awesome. And then they got rid of events on LinkedIn, and it really kind of upset me. But what I love about when you can say to somebody, not only happy birthday, but you can say congrats on a new position,
Yes.
or something like that. It's amazing how many times people will say back to you, oh, thank you very much. How are you doing?
And that starts conversation.
That starts a great conversation, which can end up in taking it offline and actually meeting for a cup of coffee, meeting for a lunch, and actually getting caught up with somebody. And I think that's one of the great things about LinkedIn. LinkedIn is actually, for the first time to me in the past 2 years, become a real social tool. But I actually love it because it doesn't have the feel of Facebook at all. It's all professional. There is no, back and forth about political issues and things like that.
Or what
Everybody,
my cat did today.
exactly, exactly. Oh, cat videos, don't get me started. Anyway, but yes, it's just very professional. But I find it's a lot more real than the other social medias out there, and you can really make true connections with people on LinkedIn.
Very good. Ken, that old clock on the wall keeps moving. And we've covered some vital information. I know that our viewers and podcast listeners will want to get in touch with you for more of your expertise. So give us your contact information, please.
Sure. You can reach me online, going to my website, and all my contact information is there. And it's just the social glue, but I spell glue with GLOO.
Very
So,
creative.
yes, that was my wife's idea. I wanted to be the social goo, but she didn't think that was a good idea. So we became the social glue, with GLOO.com. And um, you can also reach me calling me 678-358-3680. That's actually my mobile number. I take calls all the time and talk with people. I love giving advice. If someone just says, how do you do this? I'm here to help them. So I love giving advice.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your advice with us today. And since
Sure.
you've given your contact information, I'll share mine. Bill Lampton, the Biz Communication Guy. So logically, my website is B-I-Z, bizcommunicationguy.com. Invite you to go there, look at my services for corporations and leaders, and contact me. And my phone, of course, is available there, 678-316-4300. Look forward to having all of you join us next week for another highly informative and interesting version of the Biz Communication Show. And before we sign off, Ken Fehner, any closing comments?
I just, getting back to the original topic, just think twice before you make a post. Just think how this might affect somebody. That's it.
Following that could help all of us tremendously. Again, thanks to everyone for being with us on the Biz Communication Show. I'm your host, Bill Lampton, the Biz Communication Guy.